Hi, everybody. Happy Easter. Christ is risen indeed. Alleluia. Alleluia. So it was just a glorious day, and I hope everyone just had a wonderful, wonderful Easter, especially with family. So let me make sure that I'm on. We are at 1,724 days. 1,700. So I can see the comments now. I'm going to tweak all this so it works better, but we're just it never was supposed to be this way, that we were the investigators, that we were the reporters, that we were um really exposing a huge, it's so big, y'all. It's so big network um that has embedded itself in our the front door of the United States, into our military. So El Paso, Fort Bliss, and it really is an international case, and it is a huge national security threat. A huge national security threat. It's um, it's so big. It makes the Iran Contra look like child's play. And there are ongoing and active investigations, and we're talking with people now that have the ear of the President of the United States, President Donald Trump. And so we're coming on pretty late. It can't be, well, of course, today was a holiday, right? Just a holy day that it has precedence over everything, right? Over everything. And so, just a few things. There's there's so much, but what I wanted to talk about today, on the eve of the Patrick Crusius plea deal sentencing in the Walmart mass shooting case in El Paso, Texas, and the El Paso Walmart mass shooting that happened on August 3rd, 2019. Was an operation. It was an operation, and absolutely our military is involved in it, which makes it a mutiny. The case is a mutiny. And of course, you see this false narrative by fake news media or misled media. Of course, Bob Moore, we know he's the biggest fake news media, or misled media, because there's been so much tampering in the case. But I don't think they have any excuse anymore. I don't think they have any excuse anymore. Natasha Paloma really doesn't have any excuse anymore. She's implicated. She's really implicated in interfering with the murder investigation of our son, Richard Halliday. And, the media is either uh, uh, not telling you about their conflicts of interest, not telling you about what's really going on, not even asking really important questions like, why didn't Joe Open Checkbook Spencer, why didn't he um, get a mental health evaluation competency hearing for Patrick Crusius, his client? Why didn't he do that? So, and sometimes I sound like I'm defending Patrick Crusius, but I'm defending uh, our system. I'm defending our process, our criminal justice system. Um, And it has been really violated in this Walmart mass shooting. Patrick Crucius, money grab, absolute money grab, and operation and conspiracy. And this word conspiracy, I really want to, um, it's like that word stupid. People, you're not allowed to use stupid because that it sounds like it's rude. But if you look up the word stupid, it means it's a stumbling block, right? You have a stumbling block, right? You're stooped, right? So it's kind of like this conspiracy. They've tried to change the meaning and make it sound like fabrication, like it is a fabrication, someone's imagination. But no, no, this is not a fabrication. This is a legal term, conspiracy. And Joe Spencer, why did Joe open checkbook Spencer not um, have Patrick Crucius um, in a competency hearing with a mental health evaluation that the state requires? The state of Texas requires a competency test. And what is the competency test for? A competency to be able to stand a trial, right? To be able to stand through a trial. And that was his obligation, and he failed that obligation. And he absolutely intentionally failed that obligation because he's not stupid. He intentionally wanted to conspire together with Judge Sam Medrano and District Attorney Jaime Esparza to milk the taxpayers for money. It's as simple as that. Uh, you know, uh, the whole the operation of the Walmart mass shooting um, was to target President Trump's investigation and audit of the Fort Bliss, what was going on there that Richard was reporting. And that makes sense to everybody, right? Why is this an operation? But that Joe opened checkbook Spencer and Judge Medrano and Jaime Esparza. Why did they go along with this conspiracy of this operation? Um, it was for the money, y'all. It was for the cha-ching at taxpayers' expense. So not only did the taxpayers, um, have to live through the assault on the criminal justice system there in El Paso and for the United States because it was election tampering. It was a national election tampering that had international implications, but it also had military implications. And there was, and I don't know how else to call it. I just call it a mutiny in our military because they did not want to be audited. They did not want to be investigated because Richard had reported multiple times the trafficking going on there. And from human trafficking, child trafficking, to the weapons and ammunition and equipment and all of those trafficking, and of course the substance abuse trafficking. The breaches of security on Fort Bliss that absolutely are documented by the generals themselves, right? By the command sergeant major themselves. That it's the allowing cartel tied individuals that have been reported with hard evidence of breaching security on Fort Bliss in the CID, with the files, breaches of security and files in the VA, breaches of security in the JAG, breaches of security at the gates, breaches of security in the barracks with a 14-year-old girl living in the barracks for 4 months. Um, and the worst type of crimes being committed against her um, for 4 months, 4 months, and she is the stepdaughter of a security guard under the director of emergency services of Fort Bliss, who's in charge of all the cameras and the gates. The breaches of security with bringing in young girls during the lockdown, during that time, during the lockdown, where they forced our military to get the Cobra Strike right in their arm, the Cobra Strike, yet they approved through Director of Emergency Services, Thomas Kane, to give these young girls passes during the lockdown to go into the barracks to party, and I'm sure they weren't 6 feet apart, right? They didn't stay 6 feet apart, and absolutely bringing in substances up to no good, up to no good. Um, this is you can discipline that, right? You can discipline that. You had the 12, I think it was 11, 12 soldiers that received poisoning in the field because they were drinking grog, which is a mixture of all kinds of alcohol, you name it. They mix it together and they put it in a sealet, which, of course, if you know about missiles and all that, you know what a sealet is. They put it in a sealet, they drank it. Well, there was antifreeze in there and they got poisoning. But this was, even um, a, um, warrant officer, right? This is senior NCOs also in during a field problem drinking grog. It, the this is building a building a emergency intake center for taken children that they call unaccompanied migrant, right, these migrants that were all under 18 years old, and 10,000 at a time. This was huge, y'all. It's huge, and I put up pictures of it. So 10,000 at a time of these children being trafficked through Fort Bliss. And of course, we discovered so much with the Santa Teresa International Jetport because of the flying. You had to transport these minors, right? These children. And now they're said to be mostly dead. That's not me. This is congressional hearings. This is the President of the United States. That happened on Fort Bliss. And so, what are we saying? We're saying that this is a national security threat, that this has been a national security risk, that there are cartel tied operatives embedded in El Paso, on Fort Bliss, that active trafficking was going, illegal criminal trafficking was going on. And President Trump in 2019 was auditing, was auditing. And that happens, it's like when a crime is committed against you, let's say it's someone um, stole your purse or whatever, you have to go into the police station and file or call them, and you have to file a report, and then they can investigate, right? You have to file a report and give them information. Well, this is what Richard did for the Trump administration. He filed his whistleblower report, and that's why the audits were going on and the investigation. And the Walmart mass shooting was to divert that that investigation, that audit. Um, and it was absolutely an attack on President Trump's administration and the the law enforcement of him doing his job, which is a mutiny then, right? And so that really just I think helps. And you can ask me questions. Thank you. So very sad. So very sad. The video and the mm, okay. Hold on. I have to block this person. Okay. So the Walmart mass shooting had to have soldiers on Fort Bliss to that were connected. And we'll get into that and all of the connections with Richard, but uh and well, Richard's murder case. But this is the eve of the Walmart mass shooting sentencing of Patrick Crusius. And things that are not said about it, that need to be said. It, and the conspiracy behind it when it comes to Joe Spencer, Judge Sam Medrano, because it's a state case. There was a federal case. That's the federal courthouse, the Mayellas and Patrick Crucius family members, right? But tomorrow is the state case, and this is the conspiracy, not with the Mayellas and the Cruciuses and the FBI and the Walmart, with Mayella Jr., being a cybersecurity uh, technician and a trained hacker. This is about the state case and the conspiracy that's in it between Joe Open Checkbook Spencer, Jaime Esparza, the DA at the time, and with conflicts of interest. His sister was at the Walmart during the shooting and had called her brother, Jaime Esparza, the DA at the time, to come to the Walmart, and he had walked the scene before it was secured, which is tampering with a crime scene. And so he had this huge conflict of interest, and then of course Sam Medrano, but they just saw money signs in their eyes. They saw money signs, and they knew this case was big. They knew that the American heart was big, that the Americans, with uh, false information, that their heart would, and of course, for those that suffered and died, the victims, um, their heart would go out to them, and that they would want justice. And so Judge Sam Medrano, and Joe Open Checkbook Spencer, and Jaime Esparza, who was allowed to stay on the case, because don't forget, or you might not know this, but Joe Spencer is one of Jaime Esparza's at the time biggest donors. Biggest donors. They're buddies. They're buddies, and you can check that out at with, because you have to be elected to be a district attorney, and or you can be appointed, right? Only if you sign your anti-bribe line can you be installed properly. But Jaime Esparza, is one of his biggest donors, was Joe Spencer. So they're buddies, and Sam Medrano, Judge Sam Medrano, those three They bypassed. See, Jaime Esparza bypassed normal protocol and processes in selecting an appointed defense attorney and a judge. So this is the big conspiracy, right? Because normally you would have a random selection of an appointed uh, taxpayer funded defense attorney for Patrick Crusius. You would have a random pick for it, but that wasn't the case. And we have the hard evidence that confirms that Jaime Esparza handpicked Joe Spencer to be the appointed tax funded defense attorney for Patrick Crusius with an open checkbook. And that Jaime Esparza also bypassed the normal random pick for the judge. And that was a little bit trickier because there was like a judge at the very beginning, and that recused herself, and then Sam Medrano. There was a lot to do. There was a lot to do to get that open checkbook that they had to do real quick. So, so yeah, to get the taxpayer money, this was all for money. All of it was for personal gain when it comes to this conspiracy. That was the motive behind this conspiracy. Okay. You can say, okay, they wanted to be political and attack President Trump's campaign for reelection, and all of that. But what, no pun intended, what trumped all of that was the money, So, and and the evidence, and I'm not just saying that from me guessing or, um, supposing or fabricating or anything. This is from the hard evidence, from the application for appointed counsel, from the audios that we have, the conversations that Joe Spencer, his confessions about the conspiracy, what they did, what their conversations were, the backroom deals, um, leaving Jaime Esparza on the case. That was absolutely a conflict of interest and criminal, and admitting to it, admitting that that was, but they decided to leave him on the case too because, he wanted part of the open checkbook. He wanted, he knew that this would be cha-ching, that this would be a lot of money because normally you would have a limit on what you could spend on such a defense. But because of this case and this national focus on this case, really international focus on this case, they got a lot of money. Um, have there been any complaints submitted to the Texas State Bar? Yes, of course there has been. Um, of course, we've been very busy behind the scenes with hundreds of complaints. So, and I think, if you count it out of who we sent all this stuff out to, it's like, geez, I would say it's more than 1,000. I don't know. I need to count it. I know it's so many. It's so many. Um, so we have absolutely listened to these audio recordings. We have documented the crimes, and it's sometimes it's you have to do your studying. You almost you have to become a lawyer, or you have to become very law savvy to understand you know everything that you're listening to and what they're all doing. But uh, like giving up the jurisdiction to the federal court, and you're like, oh, okay, but wait a minute, but they didn't tell District Attorney Yvonne Rosales. They didn't. It was a conspiracy. They did it. Um, And, they did it so that they could um, remove and replace, conspire together to remove and replace Yvonne Rosales because she was the only one that was willing to prosecute the case, to bring it to trial. She was attempting to bring it to trial, and they absolutely didn't want to have that because then there would have to be a competency test. There would have to be a mental evaluation done. There would have to be forensics being looked at and being exposed to the public, the forensics of the bullets, the weapons used, the trajectory of the shots with the victims, and all of that would have had to be exposed. And they did not want a trial. Their job was to delay. And this is not me saying it. This is in the audio recording. This was a conspiracy between Joe Open Checkbook Spencer, Sam Medrano, the judge, and Jaime Esparza to delay, to delay, to delay, and to make excuses, to make excuses and to delay. And it is now it has come out. Uh, they got they got so greedy. They got so greedy, and it's millions of dollars, y'all, millions and millions of them charging the taxpayers. And you see what's happened, right? Patrick Crusius will not face a death penalty. Um, but, in the meantime, the Department of Defense has designated and declared Richard murdered in the line of duty. And that means it is a capital murder case. And so, even though Patrick Crusius is not going to face a death penalty, those that murdered Richard will be. And the big message. Now, you can argue for Patrick Crusius. He said he doesn't know, he's not, he's not competent, but that he doesn't think he killed more than one or two, which is an admission of killing one or two people. It only takes killing one person. It takes attempted murder, right? He was there, and he surrendered. Um, was justice being served? Was the case botched? The case was botched. Justice has not been served. And, a lot of the truths are still waiting to be heard, right? A lot of the truths. And so this sentencing of Patrick Crusius is really the covering up of a lot of truth. And, but we have done our best to figure out what the heck happened because our son's case, all of a sudden, when we looked into all the hard evidence, it was so intertwined with the Walmart mass shooting, with Danae Katzen, with 3905 Bliss Avenue, with the military, Jonathan Ambrose, who's totally connected to both, Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia, totally connected, and of course Leilani Hart, and um, totally connected. Uh, and we were like, okay, what happened here, right? What happened here? And so, and what we can tell you is that Joe Open Checkbook Spencer, and Judge Sam Medrano and Jaime Esparza were allowed to conspire together. Were encouraged to conspire together, uh, to play their games to delay this case because the case um, was never to go to trial, never to be scrutinized in the public um, forum, right? Because it was uh, absolutely meant to um, take everyone's eyeballs off of Fort Bliss and the crimes that were happening there, the national security risk going on there, the trafficking, which is billions of dollars, billions. If you think the Patrick Crucius case is millions, the trafficking is billions of dollars that they wanted to um, keep flowing. They wanted to keep that flowing. And it is milking the taxpayers too in so many ways, and it's just such a national security threat. And it was also to attack the chief law enforce law enforcement of the enforcer of the country, which is the president of the United States. The president of the United States is the chief law enforcer of the country, and that's why he has that power of executive orders, right? The power of executive orders, because he's the law of the country, and of course he is also um, uh, the commander and chief of the military. And so this was really looking at Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe and his play with this, with Donna Martin, with General McConville, with General Garrett, with General Mealy, um, and Christine Wormuth, uh, Austin, right? Secretary Austin. This was such a cover up. This was and General Kelly, can't forget General Kelly. A huge player in all that. He connects the dots um, to the trafficking, uh, in a very bad way, in a very, very bad way. And so that's why you see um, that this whole scandal is way bigger than the Iran Contra. Um, and, tomorrow, if you are watching the whole hearing, because tomorrow is um, the plea deal sentencing hearing for Patrick Crucius. Remember that Joe Open Checkbook Spencer, has absolutely taken millions and millions of dollars and never requested a mental health evaluation competency hearing for his client. So he took millions of dollars as a defense, as the appointed, remember, because Patrick Crucius, even though he's from a well to do family and, absolutely bought the rifle and had a car and had a computer and had online service and had an apartment in San Antonio and had all this stuff, right? All of it, money to go buy an orange and everything. On his application, it was 000. He had zero money, zero expenses. And it was done at 5:42 a.m. It was approved at 5:42 a.m. on August 4th, 2019, to put the taxpayers on the hook so that Joe Open Checkbook Spencer, who demanded the open checkbook, not nickels and dimes, he wouldn't do it for nickels and dimes, got his wish and absolutely milked millions of dollars of taxpayer funds, and then didn't even have his client um, evaluated for competency, which is required by the law, by Texas law. Now, that is huge. Remember that when you watch that tomorrow. Also, Sam Medrano and Jaime Esparza, who It's just disgusting. It really is disgusting. And then you have James Montoya. And James Montoya's real name is Bonneau. It's a French name, Bonneau. He, and it's not that he has a bad family. He has a good family situation. But he changed his name, I guess, to be a Spanish, a Mexican name, to appeal to the voters there. Who knows? He would have to tell you why he changed his name because, he has a good family. It's not like he's mad at his family or anything like that. But he seems to be um, pretty much fake all the way around, right? Pretty much fake all the way around because he's not installed properly. He's not the DA. He never was a DA because he didn't install properly. He didn't sign his anti bribe line before he took the oath of office. Um, and he had that he tried to tamper with the documents and has the 2028 stamp. So I call him James 2028 Montoya, or 2028 stamp Montoya. But I've learned that that's not even his real name. I mean, well, it is his real name now, but really, it's not on his birth certificate. It's Bonneau. Bonneau. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Um, so yeah, they don't mind tampering. This is all criminal. This is all criminal, and this is all tied to the cartel. Um, Cartel are very involved in this, and the cartel have been now designated as the Big T organization, a foreign Big T organization with the narco politicians, and so um, aiding and abetting, and really, there needs to be a lot of restitution because we're $37 trillion in debt, and they have just milked millions and millions from us, and then given us national security threats, national security risk that has hurt our family members that live in this country, and apply different laws for some than for others. This whole illegal, the senator going down to um, El Salvador, it really displays that full scale. Uh, you know, when Representative Veronica Escobar wouldn't even give a hearing, denied us a congressional hearing in our son's case when we had, uh, and when we have a robust mountain of hard evidence that was so robust that the Department of Defense um, had to finally declare Richard in the line of duty murdered on Fort Bliss without having giving us his remains, right? So we know that the evidence is so robust that uh, you know they had no choice because they know. So, and Veronica Escobar, she doesn't care enough for a soldier, a legal. Richard was born in Poland. We had to naturalize him. Um, we had to fly here and do everything legally and pay for it all to have him be a legal citizen of the United States. We had to go through the channels to do that, and he was very, very proud of that and proud to serve his country. And Veronica Escobar wouldn't even give him when he was um, retaliated against and murdered. wouldn't give him a congressional hearing. It's really disgusting. And, uh, and he was absolutely a hero, not just law abiding, sparkling clean under duress, under uh, a whole network of individuals that wanted to frame him and make him look bad, and even under a smear campaign after he was already murdered. Um, uh, she didn't even, um, she didn't do for our hero soldier what this despicable senator from Maryland uh, is doing for, with taxpayers' money, by the way, for this murderer that has been deported, rightfully so, that was uh, did not take the time out to go through the legal channels uh, to be in this country legally, and um, and then commits this heinous crime, and also even against his own family, crimes against his own family, and gets deported, and then the senator does what he's it's just so disgusting, and it just really is a very clear example of the dual um, law that they use, right? Uh, so, and then to let you know that um, those involved in the murder of Richard, even the chief medical examiner, is a foreign illegal. He's illegal in this country. And, you know, that just blows me away, and people ask about the autopsy reports and things, and I'm like, uh, you know, it would help if we had a medical examiner that was not compromised, that was American citizen as required by the Texas Constitution, not by me, but by the Texas Constitution. It is required that you're an American citizen. It would help if we had a qualified medical examiner, instead of, because he absolutely tampered with death certificates. We have hard evidence of that. So, of death certificates in the Walmart case being tampered with, or not right, just not right. They're just not right. Um, yeah. So, it is. Where is Veronica Escobar on that? She's the one that brought him into that position. So, the dual um, standards all across the board here is so apparent. And anyone that is trying to back up Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe and say, oh, this is a good soldier. No, he's not. He's not. Just because he went to charm school, just because he might look good in a uniform, doesn't make him a good soldier, okay? it, you know, the hard evidence, you have to look at the hard evidence. He's a total criminal, and he absolutely needs to be tried for treason. And I know the definition for treason. And you get leaks, and you get our national security secrets when the whole base's security is breached. He, uh, and no one wants to do anything about it. And then you aid in a bed. He he's the one that called in Natalia Paloma and Angela Kachurga, these chosen um up to no good reporters um onto base, uh restricting um the exposure of what was really going on. So there's so much wrong with him, that hard evidence shows. And you saw it with Leilani Hart, who also has immigration problems, you know? So why is this dual standard? Sorry. You either have laws or you don't have laws, right? No dual standard. Um, and then the weaponization. And I think that that's why you see this conspiracy so ready engage in a conspiracy. All he wanted was an open checkbook. Joe Spencer was so ready to engage in a conspiracy. And it is absolutely a legal term. It's absolutely real. He was so ready to engage in that conspiracy as soon as he had his open checkbook, right? Which, when you do the timeline, and see that, on the 3rd was the shooting, on the 4th was the approval for the open checkbook, on the 5th, he was already in the prison with Patrick Crucius talking with him. Um, you know, when was this discussion, this audio tape of the conspiracy, the confirmation of the conspiracy of the three of them? When was this all kind of like planned out? And um, it it really, it's like, wow. They did it on the 3rd, that night on the 3rd, right? Um, yeah, it's uh it really, there's so many questions come into your mind on how all that happened. And so tomorrow's a big day for Joe Open Checkbook Spencer, Judge Medrano, and Jaime Esparza. I think they're all going to be, well, we know the two are going to be there. I'm sure that Jaime Esparza's eye is going to be on this. And I'm sure that district attorney, she's Yvonne Rosales, who is the legal, under the Texas Constitution, um, holdover provision, um, is the legal district attorney right now. Okay, I don't care what anyone says. You go over it and over and over it. She is the legal holdover district attorney, duly elected. And that's why, they're, um, even though they went after Bill Hicks a little bit, he's a usurper. Um, so, I'm they tried to say that Yvonne Rosales wasn't prosecuting the case, but she's the only one that was attempting to prosecute the case. When you look at the evidence, she's the only one that was trying to bring the Walmart mass shooting case to a trial and prosecute it. And they didn't like her for that. They didn't like her for her doing her job. Right. This is the problem when we have these dual standards, and that the law is, stretched and bent and disobeyed and all of this stuff. Then you have all of these abuses that come, and all of these other conspiracies that come, that want to twist everything. And she was trying to do the right thing. And I'm not saying she's a perfect DA. I'm not saying that at all. I've been, people argue with me, but she, when you look at the law, she is the holdover DA. She is the DA. And that's that. That's that. And um, so she should, um, if she, um, if she really honored her oath, she would put on her heels and her suit and come in. She'd come in and she would absolutely assert her legal right to that office. Um, so I don't know what's going to happen after tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see. But Patrick Crucius now will be in the hands of the state. He won't go to the Alcatraz of the Rockies, okay? Because Yvonne Rosales was right all along. We were right all along. Um, the state had primary original jurisdiction, however you want to say it, not the federal government. So it was really that was the crime of this whole conspiracy, of the three of them uh, giving without telling Yvonne Rosales, who was the DA at the time, who had original primary jurisdiction, that they were going to make a deal, a backroom deal, to give the jurisdiction to the federal government, uh, David Guadarrama, Judge Guadarrama. And that was so illegal, y'all. That was so illegal because Yvonne Rosales had primary jurisdiction. It was her case. It was her case. But because she wanted to prosecute the case, because she wanted to have a trial, um, they made this backroom deal to hand over her jurisdiction. They stole her jurisdiction and gave it to Judge Guadarrama. That's so illegal, so illegal. And that is um, why there's been such a delay and all these excuses um, and this plea deal at the federal level that's not ever going to be anything. Patrick Crucius is not going to go to the Alcatraz of the Rockies for 7,000 years, right? For almost 7,000 years. He's going to be in the state of Texas hands because the state of Texas has the primary jurisdiction. So he'll have to serve the state plea deal first, first. And, let's see if they give him hate crime time because, the evidence absolutely confirms that this was not a hate crime, that he's not a racist, that he absolutely had family here. This was not a random place that he chose because of the Hispanic population. He was living in San Antonio. I know San Antonio very well. It's very Hispanic population. Um, but so we know that this was not random. The Mayellas are his family. They're in the federal courthouse. They're in the DA's office. They're in the FBI office. They're at the Walmart security team. Um, they're in mental health care. Um, they're they're absolutely in El Paso. Patrick Crucius had a huge connection, very direct connection to El Paso. It wasn't a mistake. And, so the whole narrative that they're feeding about hate crime and, um, you know, being racist is all a fabrication. That's what that is, a fabrication. So it's going to be very interesting tomorrow to hear it, and please comment on all of the uh, Facebook sites that carry this hearing, that carry stories. Please comment what you know about the whole thing, because this is our country that is ran by the people, for the people, and of the people. This is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And so your comments, your courage to comment is very, very important in securing our national sovereignty and our criminal judicial system. And that's why we're on every night. That's why we do this every day for our country's sake. We can't bring back our son. We can't bring back even though I'd love to bring back my son, we can't bring back, but we can secure our nation so that this will just restrain this evil and the embedding of um, individuals that really want to do us harm, that really want to defy our rule of law, that do not want to protect our Constitution and our beautiful Texas Constitution. I mean, both of them give us voting rights and human rights and our power, and they just want to, with their charm school rhetoric, false rhetoric, they want to attack us. And yeah, so we absolutely need to speak up, and I hope that you comment in all of the coverage of this hearing tomorrow on the Walmart mass shooting, Patrick Crucius sentencing. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Olga, for coming on. And and yes, there's ongoing and active investigations going on right now, so many of them. So thank you for asking those questions. Um, and I think that this is why we have this victory, that they finally have to plea deal for Patrick Crucius. I think our active and ongoing investigations um, have brought this about. It's never how you think, you know. The justice is never how you think. So tomorrow's going to be very interesting, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of our information.